Hey there, it's Will with Pesto for All. If you've seen our latest videos, you know we're trying some experiments with hydroponic basil. And for most of those, we've been growing in our basement under LEDs, and we've been using these NFT channels. So NFT is called nutrient film technique, and that means that the plants sit in this channel and a thin layer of water runs down the length of them. And that's how they get their nutrients. That water has nutrients mixed in it that are water soluble. And what we have been doing, we tried a more traditional approach several years ago where we had plants kind of in little cubes, they're little rock wool cubes in the channels. But for what we're doing with our pesto, we just didn't get the yields we really wanted from that. And then we tried out an approach where we had this substrate. So we'd put this right in the channel and we'd seed directly onto this and our plants would grow right in here. One of those videos went kind of viral a little bit, and we've done 2 rounds with this material. This is also from Crop King. All of our channels and covers and a lot of our hydroponic supplies comes from Crop King. And it did well, but the CEO of Crop King reached out to me and we talked, and he thought long-term this had a few issues. The biggest one being the potential for downy mildew. Basil is definitely susceptible to that, and when you grow them so tightly together, he was really worried about that, and downy mildew is something we think about a lot with our field growing production, so we want to avoid that. Also, when you seed onto these and there's no covering, it makes it really susceptible to algae. So we didn't really have any losses from algae, but they are going to take some of that nutrient, and it's just a little less, clean and not as nice as it is when you have the covers on. So to get around that, he had some suggestions. And we're going to try that today. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to take these traditional tops here, which would only let us grow 8 plants, and we're going to be modifying them. So we're actually going to be cutting an additional hole, so you can see what this looks like, an additional hole on these. We're just going to be extending this, and then we're going to be cutting another hole in between those 2 extended holes. So this will give us 4 times the number of plant sites. And what we're also doing, I can show you with these seedlings, we're also growing the plants much tighter than we have in the past. So we have about 4 or 5 basil seedlings coming in each cube. So this tray will have way more plants than we've tried before. And it'll get us closer to that approach when we had the film in here. But I think it's going to work a lot better, and hopefully we'll see some pretty good results. So with that in mind, what we're going to be doing is making all these channels, I've got 20 of them, look like this one I just showed you. And to give you an idea of how that works, first I've got pencil measurements all on here. I know you're probably thinking you should make a jig for this to make this simpler. I have thought about that, but I think I'm just going to try and knock it out as best I can. It's an uneven surface, and I wasn't really sure how to do a jig for it. So you can see I've got the X's marked on the areas I'm cutting away, and these are the little extended areas. So I'm going to be doing that. So the first order of business will be to get all these measured up, and I'll show you how I do that. So first up, I've got my channel. This one's already measured, so we're going to set that one aside, along with this one, which is already cut. And by the way, for this job, I'm using this cutoff tool. These are sometimes called like an oscillating multi-tool. It's sort of like a big Dremel, but it doesn't really have any other attachments other than like blades you can get. So I'm using a 3/4 inch blade. And then I also have an 1 1/4 blade, which I was using some too, but I think I'm going to be using the 3/4 inch mostly on this. So they're kind of a pretty niche little tool, but when you need one, they're amazing. They also have a sander attachment, so they can do little 3-point sander and get into corners and stuff. So pretty handy. But let's see here. I'm going to grab this is actually a guide for cutting plywood when you don't have a table saw, because I don't have a table saw big enough for that. And it is the only thing I have, a straight edge that's 5 feet long. These are 60-inch channels. So I'm going to start off by making a mark along the edge. Then come around to the other side and do the same thing. And as you can see, that kind of gives me this rail running down the length of it. Then what I'm going to do is come along here, and I'm just going to find an inch past, because these are inch holes, with my square, mark that, and do the same all the way down this sheet. And this does not have to be exact, because my cubes are smaller than an inch anyways. They will be once they are cut out of that sheet I showed you. So it doesn't have to be precise, but there we go. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find center between what's left. So I've got my hole here, got a hole here that I'm going to be cutting this, and then I want my next two holes that go in between this and the center of that. So it's about 5 inches, so 2.5, and I'm going to make a mark and do that all the way down. This is 3 now, because this one's a little shorter than the others, so the rest of these 3 will be center. And I've got an idea. I'm going to try to speed this up once I get done showing you this one. I'm going to try lining up a few at once, and we'll see how it goes. But this is how I'm doing it. And really, the whole idea of these videos, I'm making these for you all like myself. You know, I wanted to get into hydroponics, and you know, it seems like what's out there is either, you know, these units that basically just go on your countertop, or, you know, they fill like a warehouse, right? Like, and so this kind of idea of like very small scale commercial hydroponics, but definitely not just for like, you know, the home like hobby grower. You know, this is a little more intense than that. Although, you know, if you felt like doing that, you could do it for that for sure, and you could grow food for yourself, and it would be great. But I did want to make this content in mind for people who wanted to try a bigger scale hydroponics to see what it was like, because I've had to kind of learn a lot of this along the way myself. So, and I'm by no means an expert, but hopefully this is helpful for you. So from that center mark, I then just measure over 1 inch on each side, and then you can see this gives me my box. And one thing I like to do, the woodworker in me, is put an X on what I'm going to remove, because when you have so many lines here, you know, you have this line, you know, this area, you don't want to cut out the wrong slot. That would not be fun. On these little guys, I don't really do it, but you could do it like that too, where you've got X's on just what's being removed, which is a nice way to make sure when you're moving along, you don't make a mistake. Okay, so that's the first one done. It's now looking like that other one I've got marked up. And I'm going to come back in a little bit after I've got all these marked. So I'll see you then. Hey y'all, so if you saw the time lapse, you'll notice I actually had kind of a different way I ended up doing this. Once I got started, I had the thought to cut a 1" by 2" block, and I put this little mark down the middle. And that actually let me just come along here like this and mark on the tops where I wanted it, and that saved a ton of time. And for the ones in the middle, there's this little ridge that runs down the middle of these channels, and I just centered on that ridge with the marks on the ends, and just kind of eyeballed the distance in between, and then I was able to get my hole marked out around that. So that worked out really well. Next, I'm going to start cutting these. I'll probably just do a couple holes and show you, and then probably either time lapse or just skip the rest, because I think it's going to take a little bit. But I've got my cutoff tool here I was telling you about with the 3/4 inch blade, and what I'm going to do is go at an angle, but not too steep too steep or too shallow of an angle. And if I need to, like on the ends or these slots, get in there, I'm going to do a plunge cut to do that. So we'll see how that goes. Hey everybody! So it took me a few hours, but I got them all cut out, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. The only thing that really was different from what I described before I started doing this is that I did end up using my 1¼ blade on my oscillating multi-tool instead of the 3/4 inch. It just seemed to work better, especially on these longer cuts. That did mean on the ends I couldn't do a plunge cut because it's too wide, so I did have to kind of go in at an angle to get those. So just something to keep in mind if you were doing something similar to like this. And one thing to note is that these holes, this is really meant for like I'm doing basil, where I'm looking almost at a kind of like not a microgreen, but not a mature plant stage. If you were doing, lettuce heads or something where you wanted the plants to get more mature, the default spacing that Crop King had would probably work pretty well, so you might not even need to modify this. And if we were outfitting, say, like a whole greenhouse or something big like that, Crop King could actually put these in for us at the factory. We wouldn't have to cut them ourselves. So definitely was a little bit of a tedious job, but it's done. So I'm going to get it hooked up in the hydroponics, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all good to go. All right, I've got the tops on the channels, and my seedlings are in there. Really happy with how these turned out. For my next video, I'll do a full kind of teardown of this system and show you all how I built it and some things I've learned along the way. But in the meantime, hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching.